Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. Olympic equestrians in Staten Island, autistic gymnasts in Madison Square Garden, sailing at a 23-acre waterfront in Brooklyn, cycling and badminton in Queens, and water polo in the Bronx. These, along with an expanded Javits Center with a stadium for the Jets, an extended number 7 line, and an entirely new neighborhood in West Queens. A dream? Maybe. Deputy Mayor Dan Doctoroff presented the vision of NYC 2012, which he headed before he became deputy mayor, to New York's movers and shakers at a breakfast sponsored by the Association for a Better New York. City Talk was there.
As most of you know, at the end of this month, the U.S. Olympic Committee will be visiting New York to make sure, on their final visit, to make sure that they get a final review of what we have in store. You will see some of those plans in a few minutes in Dan's presentation. And we will have to all work together, and there are a lot of people in this room who have worked very hard and who will continue to work hard to make sure that we do get that bid. And we also have in this room today many Olympians, past, present, and future. There are about 70 of them, and Dan will be introducing them later. And with their inspiration and their hard work and our hard work together, we will make sure we will cross that finish line and make sure we get the bid. We are one of 4 cities that are in contention: Houston, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. Those are our competitors. And we have to work hard to make sure that our bid is accomplished. There are many things that are going on to accomplish these goals, and with Dan's involvement before he became deputy mayor and now as deputy mayor, we are sure we will be very successful. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Deputy Mayor Dan Doctoroff.
It was 8 years ago that I first came up with the idea of hosting the Olympic Games, sitting at the World Cup semifinal game out at the Meadowlands. It happened to be Italy versus Bulgaria. And that's what gave me the inspiration to pursue this effort to host the Olympics, because I thought to myself, you know, this is an incredible event. The stands are filled with people from Italy, from Bulgaria, Americans, New Yorkers from Italy, Bulgarian ancestry, and we could fill this stadium with virtually any 2 countries in the entire world. And therefore, I thought, why haven't we ever hosted the Olympics? Well, we've obviously come a long way in 8 years. I've learned a lot about the Olympic Games, and I've learned a lot about New York City. One of the things that I learned about New York City is New York is, in fact, the birthplace of Olympic sports in America. Most people don't know this, but of the 28 Olympic sports, 17 of them got their American starts in New York City. Whether that was the first wrestling match ever held in the United States, the first rowing meet, whatever it was, the list goes on and on. Other thing that many people don't know is that from an athlete standpoint, New York has a truly remarkable Olympic heritage. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of America's greatest Olympians were born in New York City, were raised in New York City, or make New York City their home today. We are extremely indebted to our Olympians and Paralympians who have worked so hard with us to bring us to the point we are today. What I'd like to do now is just tell you a little bit about where in fact we are, what our plan is, and how I think we're going to end up winning. Of every 10 television viewers worldwide, 9 watched the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney. They were drawn by the grueling competition, the spectacle of 200 nations living and competing together, and the dramas of extraordinary people pursuing excellence and dreams of greatness. No event cast a more powerful or universal spell. In New York, where all the world's cultures live, work, and strive together every day, The call of the Olympic Games resonates with unique intensity. New Yorkers see in the Games of our city's promise that anyone from anywhere has the potential to rise to the top. Right now, New York is competing for the 2012 Olympic Games. And in the wake of the September 11th tragedy, there couldn't be a more perfect time. Hosting the Olympic Games in 2012 would celebrate the renewal of New York's promise and would propel the city to even greater heights. To host the Games, New York will first have to be selected as the U.S. Olympic Committee's candidate city on November 3rd, 2002, from 4 cities remaining in the competition. Then, in 2005, the International Olympic Committee will select the host city from a worldwide field. And after that, if New York is chosen, we would have 7 years to prepare to host 15,000 athletes and coaches, 20,000 members of the media, and 2 million visitors from around the world. Hosting the Olympic Games will require world-class venues for 28 sports. It will require a system to transport spectators and Olympic participants quickly and safely, with minimal disruption to the city's life. It will require superior plans for accommodations, security, communications, environmental protection, and health care. And it will require unprecedented teamwork from the entire city. For the past 3 years, hundreds of New Yorkers have worked together to formulate an Olympic plan. This plan is breathtaking in its long-term impact on New York City. It spreads the benefits and excitement of the Games across the 5 boroughs, and it ensures convenient and reliable transportation to Olympic events throughout the city. Our plan, which we call the Olympic X, locates nearly every sports venue along 2 intersecting transportation axes, and all but 3 within the 5 boroughs. The north-south axis follows the water from the Bronx and Upper Manhattan, down the Harlem and East Rivers, along the Brooklyn and Queens waterfronts, and across the Bay to Staten Island. The east-west axis follows the commuter rail lines, New Jersey Transit and the Long Island Railroad, from the Meadowlands, across, underneath Manhattan at 33rd Street, and out to Flushing Meadows in Queens. Where these 2 axes cross will be the Olympic Village, to be built on the Queens side of the East River at the Hunters Point site known as Queens West. This extraordinary waterfront site will provide 4,400 privately financed, high-quality housing units. An Olympic Village at Queens West would enjoy spectacular views of the city's skyline and will present the inspiring sight of 2 great international institutions, the Olympic Games, the United Nations, and the Olympic Games saluting each other across the East River. With the Olympic Village at the crossing point of the Olympic X, the world's athletes will be located at the very center of a New York Olympic Games. From the Olympic Village, high-speed ferries will transport athletes up and down the river to riverfront venues on the north-south axis, and special trains running along the rail lines will reach venues on the east-west axis. Athletes will reach their competitions swiftly, comfortably, and safely without traveling on the city's streets and highways. The north-south axis of the Olympic X begins at Columbia's Baker Field in northern Manhattan, where field hockey will be held, then moves down the Harlem River to historic Yankee Stadium for baseball. Harlem's aging Art Deco 369th Regiment Armory will be renovated into a 10,000-seat arena to be used for boxing and rhythmic gymnastics, and left as a multi-sport community facility after the Games. An extension of the ferry service will link to Pelham Bay Park in the Bronx, the site for shooting, modern pentathlon, and water polo. Moving further down the river into Queens, Astoria Park and Astoria Pool will be renovated to host swimming, diving, and synchronized swimming. Just below the Queensboro Bridge, a new indoor athletics center on the waterfront will host badminton and track cycling. Down the river in Williamsburg, a new 23-acre waterfront park will host archery and beach volleyball. Indoor volleyball will be held at the Brooklyn Sportsplex, to be built on Coney Island, where spectators will also watch Olympic sailing competition in the ocean launch from a new marina in Breezy Point, Queens. Across the bay in St. George, Staten Island, the Yankees' new minor league stadium will host softball, and road cycling will take place on the hilly streets above. In the Staten Island Greenbelt, the city's largest park, a new equestrian center will host all riding events, and a mountain biking course will be laid out. The east-west axis begins at the Meadowlands with basketball at Continental Airlines Arena and soccer in Giant Stadium. Crossing the Hudson River into Manhattan, the Javits Convention Center will house fencing, judo, table tennis, taekwondo, weightlifting, and wrestling. Just south of the Javits Center, the Olympic Stadium, housed in an expansion of the Javits Center on top of the Long Island Railroad's open yards, will host track and field and the opening and closing ceremonies. Continuing east, Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena, will be the home for artistic gymnastics and trampoline. Across the East River in Queens, in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, the National Tennis Center, the nation's premier tennis facility, will host Olympic tennis. Rowing and flatwater canoeing will take place in the park's 2 man-made lakes, which will be dredged, dug out, and reconfigured into a 1-mile-long, world-class course surrounded by new ball fields, trails, and restored environmental habitats. On the long-neglected World's Fairgrounds, a compact circular course will be built for whitewater canoeing. Finally, team handball will be held in Nassau Coliseum in Long Island, and the triathlon will take place in Central Park. Thanks to the Olympic X, athletes, coaches, officials, and the media will travel almost exclusively by Olympic rail or Olympic ferry. For spectators, nearly every venue is located near a subway stop. And during the summer, the city's subways and buses carry 870,000 fewer people each weekday than they do during the autumn peak, leaving plenty of room to make this a true mass transit Olympic Games. In fact, careful planning and public education are likely to cause traffic to actually decline during the Games. During the 1984 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, a city whose reputation for traffic jams is legendary, highway congestion was dramatically lower than normal. Security is, of course, of critical importance. The key test, though, is whether a city has the experience to host security-intensive events, from the Statue of Liberty Centennial to Times Square to the remarkable performances of our emergency services in the wake of 9/11. No city has demonstrated its ability to handle any conceivable situation like New York. And after the dramatic drop in crime, New York is the safest large city in the United States. From an accommodation standpoint, New York is superbly qualified. The New York metropolitan area has as many hotel rooms as the metro areas of Barcelona, Sydney, and Atlanta combined. New York's Center City hotel capacity is still more impressive. Manhattan has at least 4 times as many hotel rooms as any of these other recent Olympic host cities. We have carefully analyzed the revenues from past Olympic Games and made adjustments to reflect current trends in television rights and sponsorship fees, as well as seat-by-seat projections for ticket sales. Based on conservative assumptions, a New York Olympic Games in 2012 would generate $3.3 billion in revenues, with no public funding required. Of that, about $2.1 billion would be needed for the operating costs of the Games. The remaining $1.2 billion would be available to invest in a permanent legacy of parks and recreational facilities built for the games, but left for New Yorkers to enjoy for generations. So, we believe that New York has developed a bold and feasible plan to host a magnificent Olympic Games. But we have to ask ourselves, with all we have to accomplish in this city, is that where we want to focus our time and energies? By nearly a 7-to-1 margin across all racial, ethnic, and geographic lines, New Yorkers favor hosting the Games. Underlying that opinion is a much more extraordinary force. The pride that New Yorkers feel in their city and in each other is only exceeded by their willingness to sacrifice to ensure that New York becomes an even greater city than it was before September 11th. It is that spirit and energy that we will channel to accomplish great things. To do that, we hope to capitalize on the firm deadline that the Olympic Games impose on a city. If you study the history of Olympic host cities, you see that in every case, when the Olympic Games come to town, long-standing building and infrastructure projects are taken off the shelf, barriers are overcome, and projects get accomplished in an unprecedented spirit. For New York, hosting the Olympic Games offers an opportunity to accomplish things we've always dreamed of. The $1.2 billion spent on Olympic facilities, all from revenues generated by the Olympic Games, would be the largest single investment in recreational facilities in New York's history. New Yorkers would gain over 600 acres of new or dramatically enhanced parkland, 3 new community multi-sport facilities, and new and renovated swimming pools, tracks, and ball fields. After decades of underinvestment, the city's youth will again be able to practice and compete in world-class facilities for a wide range of sports, including some never before available in New York, such as rowing, cycling, equestrian, and whitewater canoeing. New York will re-emerge as a national center for competitive amateur sports, with youth programs revived across the city. Along the East River, the Games would spark the transformation of a barren stretch of abandoned wharves and warehouses into the centerpiece of the city's waterfront revival. Up and down the waterfront, new and renovated parks, pools, and ball fields would be filled with children who desperately need a place to play. The Olympic Village at Queens West would become one of the city's most exciting residential communities. Linked by the new ferry system, the Olympic Village and the Olympic recreational facilities would dramatically enhance the attractiveness of the entire East River waterfront. Derelict buildings would be renovated into thousands of new apartments, just a short ferry ride from Midtown. Just as happened in Flushing and Silicon Alley, new residential neighborhoods will lead to new businesses and new jobs. Along New York's other great river, the Hudson, the Long Island Railroad's exposed Hudson Yards, south of 34th Street between 10th and 12th Avenues, would be the stage for the transformation of Manhattan's final frontier. Block after block after block, the surrounding area is dominated by aging warehouses, open parking lots, and auto body shops. Jobs are scarce, not to mention residents. The nearest subway is a half a mile away. Under the Hudson Yards plan, the Javits Center, now woefully inadequate in size and facilities, would be reconfigured and would expand both to the north and the south, finally becoming a world-class facility. Thanks to an ingenious design, the southern expansion, built on a 4-block platform over the Hudson Yards, could serve not just as an exhibition and convention center, but also for just 10 days a year as a new home for the Jets and as an Olympic stadium in 2012. Pedestrian bridges over 12th Avenue would connect the Javits Center and the community to the new Hudson River Park, dramatically enhancing access to the waterfront. On a second 4-block platform over the rail yards would be a new 8.5-acre Olympic Park. Olympic Square. 40% bigger than Bryant Park, this would be the largest public park carved out of the Manhattan street grid in over a century. It would be surrounded by 2 convention hotels, a state-of-the-art office tower, and maybe even a new Madison Square Garden. Below ground, a new Metro-North station would finally allow riders from the Bronx and Westchester to reach the West Side directly. A new Long Island Railroad stop would connect Long Island to the site. And most important, the number 7 subway line would be extended from Times Square down 8th Avenue underneath the AC&E to Penn Station and across 33rd Street to the Olympic Square. Using the extended number 7 line, New Yorkers could finally travel between Grand Central and Penn Station without changing trains, and Hudson Yards would become accessible to the entire subway system. Together, the expanded Javits Center, the hotels, the new transit connections, and the new Olympic Square will unlock the potential of the surrounding area. Private investment will flow in, making Hudson Yards a new major center of commercial and residential development. Olympic Square will take its place alongside Times Square, Lincoln Center, and Rockefeller Center as one of the city's great public gathering places, thronged with tourists, office workers, residents, and sports enthusiasts. Overall, the economic impact of hosting the games would be enormous, $11 billion and 135,000 jobs. With numbers like those, it is not surprising that the Olympic Games are a coveted prize. And in the competition to host the 2012 Olympic Games, factors beyond the technical will come into play. Historically, the Games have been awarded to those cities that offer not only a superior plan, but also a compelling Olympic story. For Atlanta, it was the emergence of the New South. For Athens, host of the 2004 Games, it was the return of the Games to their country of origin. For Beijing, the host for 2008, it is the city's status as capital of the world's most populous nation. But New York can offer the Olympic movement something no other city can. We are not just an American city. We are the world's second home. 40% of New Yorkers are foreign-born, and even more speak a foreign language at home. Immigrants built New York City, and they continue to come today from every corner of the globe at an astonishing rate of 100,000 each year. Only in New York would athletes from nearly every nation, from Brazil to Bulgaria, from Ireland to India, from Kenya to Kazakhstan, find their own neighborhood cheering them on. Throughout our history, New York has welcomed people from every nation and creed to pursue their dreams, to be judged on their abilities, and to succeed by their determination. In this most competitive yet most accepting of all cities, we live by the Olympic ideals every day. Even the Olympic motto, swifter, higher, stronger, perfectly describes our city. And when New Yorkers cheer, the world cheers with us. From Charles Lindbergh's pioneering flight across the Atlantic to the ending of the Second World War, from the Apollo lunar landings to the Statue of Liberty centennial, New York is the place where the world honors its heroes and celebrates its milestones. At the close of each year, all eyes turn to the dropping ball in Times Square as we celebrate the passage from old into new. Now more than ever, New York remains a beacon of hope to the world, a city whose diversity is its greatest resource, a city where peoples of all nations prosper and celebrate together. Now New York has the chance to rebuild and to make our city even greater. Hosting the Olympic Games in 2012 will both celebrate our rebirth and act as a catalyst to it, giving our city a legacy of spirit and progress for generations to come. Thank you.
The U.S. Olympic Committee will be in New York June 30th and July 1st. The task force will name 2 finalists among New York, Washington, D.C., Houston, and San Francisco in September. The committee will choose the winning American city in November. The International Olympic Committee will select the host city for the 2012 Games in 2005. Will New York host the Olympics in 2012? Should it? A dream to some, a potential fiscal nightmare to others. Olympics in New York in 2012, a conversation to be continued.